I am so excited today that we are going to talk about events. Obviously, it is a hot topic for all of us because it has just been such a wild and woolly ride as to what we do with events and what we do with programming. So to introduce myself, I'm Robin Thompson, and I am a fundraising consultant. I'm based here in Vail, Colorado. And it was 9 weeks ago, I wanted to do something to be able to help nonprofits. And so I started doing these webinars. And I've had some just incredible people that are experts that have come on, and I've interviewed, and they've told us what they've seen as we've watched this whole thing develop. And so one of the things that happened during that process was that people said, you know, what are we doing about events? What about programming? And the Nonprofit Learning Series is something we've been doing now for about 3 years. And we'd always done it in person because the room where we had it at the US Bank, which is one of our sponsors, we didn't have internet access. And that's a good thing because then people couldn't, you know, be on the internet while we were having our Nonprofit Learning Series. But then when this happened, we said, let's just open this up so that others can also participate. So want to thank our sponsors for the Nonprofit Learning Series, which is the Vail Valley Partnership, Mountain Youth, and US Bank. And so anyway, that's how this all started, and I'm excited about today. So let me tell you just a little bit about the agenda of what we'll do and how we'll move through this today. And then we'll get started with hearing from some other people as to what they've done for events. Okay, so here in just a few minutes, we're going to have, let's see if I can count, 6 people who are going to talk a little bit about things that affect events. So, and I'll introduce those people in just a minute. So we'll do that for about a half hour. And then after that, I'm going to put you all into breakout rooms. And I don't know if you all have done breakout rooms before, but what will happen is that when I hit the click button, it will separate you all, and some describe it like you're going to another neighborhood. And so you'll be in smaller groups, and there's going to be a list of questions that your small group will talk about for about 20 minutes. And then when after the 20 minutes, we'll come back together again, and you all will share what you learned, and you'll share in the chat box. And then if some of you have stories that we really need to hear about things you've done for events or for programming, then we'll open it up and let you talk too. And so this will go until 10:30. And so it's a little bit longer than what we normally do, but since you're going to be in small groups and you're going to be talking, and I know that some of you have already told me you have to leave at 10, and so just know that we know that that's going to happen, but hopefully you'll be able to stay for the whole thing and cancel if you have another meeting right after that. All right, so let's start out with Elise Howard. And Elise works for Habitat for Humanity. And what happened was that just like immediately almost after we were put under house arrest, they had the Carpenter's Ball. And so they had to just quickly pivot and reimagine that. So she's going to talk a little bit about that and about the what they did and what the results were. So Elise?
Hi. Okay, sorry, I'm getting a couple pop-ups here. I think I have it under control. Yeah, thank you so much, Robin, for inviting me to share. And it is so nice to see so many really familiar faces. I too have been feeling a little isolated in my house, and I'm not out at the sunny job site in Gypsum. I just put it behind me to spare you all kind of what's really behind me, which is just a wall. Yeah, so the Carpenter's Ball, I know there's so many familiar faces, and so many of you have helped us with the Carpenter's Ball or participated in some way in the past years. It's an event that's pretty near and dear to my heart. I've been with Habitat about 15 years, and we've always had a Carpenter's Ball for all those 15 years. It is our one sort of annual signature fundraising event. We raise, you know, almost $500,000, and it's typically timed right before we go to pull permits and break ground and kind of get into the most expensive part of our construction year at Habitat. And so it's really important to us to have cash. There's a lot of heavy cash outlay for our organization, you know, in April. So it's really important. So this year, the Carpenters Ball, it's always the second Saturday in March. And this year it was, that was March 14th. And so I think, just like Robin said, the story of the Carpenters Ball this year was a quick pivot. It was about 48 hours from when we decided on Wednesday, which was the 11th of March. And that week, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure you all sort of remember that week. Everything was changing. Like on Monday night, I thought we were going to have a Carpenters Ball. On Tuesday morning, I still thought it would be possible. We were talking to the Hyatt about extra sanitizing stations and changing some things around. And then by Wednesday night, it was really clear that that was the night the governor had come on and said, you know, I advise against travel to the high country. It became really clear that we couldn't have the event. And so I think just in our organization, I think we really pride ourselves on thoughtful decision making and not making, you know, knee-jerk choices. And so I think that was like really the first step in the quick pivot, was really like getting our leadership team together and making a decision, and then just building consensus with our board and building consensus, quite honestly, with a lot of our key sponsors. The sponsorship for the Carpenters Ball for 2020 was, I think, was really the highest it had ever been. We had, you know, over 450 people registered for the event. And so I think, you know, step number one was really building, once we sort of knew that we didn't think it was safe to go forward, really building consensus with all of our key stakeholders. And then, you know, after that, because we felt, I think we didn't really even have, we really decided to cancel and not to postpone. And I think in hindsight, that was a really good decision on our part. It was, for one, it was really important to have a clear communication to go out to all of our ticket holders and our sponsors. And also, I think there was just so much unknown, and I think there continues to be so much unknown. At the time, we felt really strongly that there's so many great events in this community that once we missed our second Saturday in March, if we were to postpone, at the time, my thought process was, how will we find a new date? Because we wouldn't want to conflict or take away from anybody else's event. And then, you know, as things have progressed with COVID, I think we've also seen there's still, you know, quite a bit of uncertainty out there about, you know, in-person events. So I think that decision to cancel versus postpone for our organization was critical and was the right decision. And then we basically just had to work with what we had. I think lessons learned, and maybe some of the other people will talk about this, was like what platform to use. So we didn't really have a choice to pick our platform. We have always, we have used AES, Auction Event Solutions, to run our auction on site with tablets and smartphones since probably 2012. And so we had them signed up again, and we were able to take what would have been, you know, an at the Hyatt auction and just put it online. And so we just sort of, everything was all loaded in there. We had to like do a couple things on the back end, and we were able to quickly get that ready to launch in a virtual format. And then we use an online CRM database. It's called Charity Proud. And it's, I'd say the functionality of it is mid-level. It's not all the bells and whistles of some of the CRMs out there. And I think a different one probably could have done a better job. But, you know, our paddle raise is a key component of the success of the Carpenters Ball. And this is our 25th anniversary building homes in Eagle County. So we had secured a $100,000 match for the event. And so for me, I really just wanted to, you know, salvage as much of that match as I could, and, you know, unload as many of those auction items as possible. And so we did a really quick pivot. We used our website. We actually used like a blog page of our website to, you know, turn around and use our 25th anniversary messaging, the video that we had done in advance, which was a story of one of our volunteers that has participated in every home we've built for the last 25 years. And then those two, the CRM database for the paddle raise, and then the auction database for the auction items. And we just, you know, got it up there on Saturday, and it was, I think the event ended up being successful. And the reason I think the event was successful was really because of clear communication to our sponsors and our ticket holders. As soon as we canceled, we wrote them an email, a letter, but it was via email, and asked them if they would please consider donating their sponsorship and their ticket purchase to Habitat. And I have to tell you that every single nobody asked for their money back, which is a testament to the generosity of our community and our supporters. But I also believe like that we all, as nonprofit and fundraising professionals, like we just can't forget our best practices. And I think in our organization, one of those is clear communication, being transparent and honest, but also managing accounts receivable. I'm a real stickler for when someone agrees to a sponsorship to get their money in as fast as possible. And in this situation, that was critical, because had we had outstanding payments, it would have been a lot harder to ask for that money. So I think, you know, those were kind of the key components. I do want to mention that all of our partners, including the Hyatt, which was our venue partner, were fabulous, incredibly understanding. And so we ended up meeting most of our goals. I'm still working on the paddle raise portion and trying to get some of the, you know, I think that was the biggest missed opportunity. And I think that is like maybe one of the biggest missed opportunities of not meeting in person, is kind of the energy and the enthusiasm that those paddle raises create. And I'm excited to hear everyone else's ideas, and I'm happy to answer questions. But, you know, we were pleased with how it turned out, but I think it came down to good decision making and those best practices that we all, you know, try to use every day. So thanks.
Wow, thank you. So in the end, it sounds like it worked out pretty well, but then you may just need some more ideas to replace what the paddle raise would have been.
I think so. And I think the timing our event was such that I didn't have to solicit sponsorship knowing it was going to be a virtual event. And so I'm also just really interested to hear, if you set out to plan a virtual event, kind of more, what does that look like? Because ours was, again, it was really the story of a quick pivot and using what we had already created to, you know, kind of make, you know, lemonade out of lemons, so to speak.
All right, great. Well, thank you. And so if you have questions for Elise, you can put them in the chat box, and we'll just keep going, and then we'll answer some of those questions later. Okay, so let's next go to Lauren Immenacher. Hopefully I got that somewhat right, Lauren. She's at the Bell Valley Partnership, and she's going to share her experience of planning and orchestrating online events. And so let me spotlight you here so that everybody can see you.
Okay, thanks so much. So as Robin said, I'm Lauren Immenacher with the Vail Valley Partnership, and I'm events and office manager there. But I actually came from this position from Dartmouth College, where they had an event that they've had for many years. It's in their 38th annual, and they actually already had a virtual part of the event. So I really kind of wanted to be able to share that insight with this group, and really, you know, what a virtual event can look like, what a components of it can be. I think in a lot of ways that is one way to pivot now. That is an interesting kind of way that you still can engage with your audience, especially if you have events where you know that you're in close proximity and there is no way to really do social distancing, either because of your numbers or the space, the venue, you know, a variety of different factors. But I would say that there's definitely opportunity and kind of options to do either a virtual event, which is going to look different than what your, you know, normal event does to some extent, but all events are going to be looking a little bit different this summer. But there's also an opportunity to integrate kind of this peer-to-peer fundraising and this option of of how can you tap into a broader audience for the actual fundraising and have your participants do part of the fundraising rather than necessarily just your staff. I know there are some small nonprofits on the line, so that does kind of take a little bit of pressure off, you know, the staff having to really do a lot of the actual fundraising out there, especially as Elise said, you know, if you have sponsorships in already, that's great. If you're going out and getting sponsorships now, I think it's a little bit more challenging than, you know, than it would have been in previous years. So I guess some of the bits that I would say is, you know, consider if you can set a time frame for your event. So most events oftentimes do happen over, you know, one day or a few days. If you're able to have it happen over, for example, a month when people can really go out and do it when it fits with them, it may give them a little bit more flexibility in order to still participate in your event, but have it work for each person. And then the engagement, you know, the engagement can be a little bit more difficult with virtual events. And the one thing, at least that I found when we were doing a virtual event out on the East Coast, was to really make sure that you have ways for your, you know, your participants to engage. So whether that's asking them to send in photos of them doing their event, you know, from their home or from wherever they are, or whether, you know, it's having that they are able to invite others to participate with them. And, you know, then you can have the whole family participate. And I guess, you know, kind of the one other piece is a lot of events tend to be, you know, for just the adults or the people who really are able to do that fundraising or commit to a certain price to participate. But I think there is a lot of opportunity, at least right now, to have a family-friendly event, given that so many of us are at home and with our families or with, you know, the young ones in our life, and really kind of having that maybe it's a family-friendly version, like you still can have that adults can do it and you can have different price tiers if you want, or things such as that. But I think really being able to find ways to engage the whole family is probably going to be very important this year, especially since families are spending so much time together. And then I guess the one thing I would say is, you know, we have a really strong community here, I know, and I think a lot of communities do, in the sense that if you've had participants who have, you know, supported your organization for years, that they will continue to support. It's just a matter of having it in a way that they feel comfortable supporting. So I would say even for the events where you do have, you know, you are having an in-person bike ride on a Saturday because you're able to do social distancing, perhaps allow people to do it virtually as well, because I think that there is a lot of opportunity there that, if people aren't comfortable actually being at the venue that day, you're still able to engage with them. And a lot of them still want to engage with all of our nonprofits. So it's just a matter of really thinking outside the box a little. And for the most part, it's not going to take a whole lot more planning. If you just wanted to add, you know, that someone can do a virtual bike ride, they can do it, you know, on their own day, send you a photo type thing. You can always share that there's this option out there. But that way, at least everyone's comfortable. Or if you have to, you know, as we know, kind of with, depending on how the phases go with the blue phase and the black phase, you know, really being able to have that if your event has to be limited to a certain size, you know, that you give people an option still to participate, even if you have to keep your event at, let's say, 50 people or 250 people. So I guess those are kind of at least my takeaways from doing events, you know, previously. And then with the Vail Valley Partnership, you know, we're obviously pivoting. We did our Success Awards and virtually last Friday, and really just figuring out ways of, you know, how can we still provide events in different formats? And really the webinar format is at least what we've been using a lot for ours in the business community. So I think there's all different ways, depending on what your event is, to be able to do it where people still participate in an active event outside, like so many of our summer events are, as well as really being able to, you know, try something different. And if your event looks totally different for 1 year, people are going to understand. I guess that would be one of my biggest pieces of advice, is everyone's working in this together. And it's okay if your event looks totally different, you know, for 1 year, if that's what you're able to do to make it work within your budget and to make you still be able to have, you know, participants and have it work for the organization. You know, don't be afraid to change it up for a year, and then you can always see what went well, what didn't, and maybe incorporate some of that back into the actual event when things get calmed down a little bit.
Great. So thank you for that, because that's a interesting peer-to-peer type of thing. And some nonprofits were already doing peer-to-peer, but other ones weren't. And so just trying to reimagine what might that peer-to-peer look like. So great. Okay. So thank you for sharing that. And we will move right along. So next up is James Dilzel, and he's with Eagle River Watershed, and he's going to talk about the film festival and creating online content. So let me get you up here on the screen, James. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. Yeah, as Robin said, I'm James with Eagle River Watershed Council, and I'm mainly going to focus on our Wild and Scenic Film Festival that we decided to kind of shift during this weird time that we're all facing. At our March board meeting, we were having the larger conversation of what our spring's going to look like, and that was March 12th. So it was as everything was changing and we were realizing that we had to be very dynamic. And at that meeting, we decided to just postpone the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. This event was our 5th annual, and it raises a lot of the critical funds for our educational programming throughout the year. We're a super small nonprofit, and most of our budget goes to research that we do here in Eagle County surrounding our watershed. So this raises a lot of funding for the stuff that I do as an education and outreach coordinator, from our community series to in-school programs and that kind of stuff. So we decided to postpone it, and we're kind of on pause with that for a couple weeks. But as we noticed, we realized this was going to be kind of the long haul, and an in-person event might not be possible for a long time. And this was going to be held on April 29th. So it's kind of in that in-between season when folks are still interested in attending, a 2.5-hour film program. We kind of realized, if we push it into the summer, no one's really going to want to spend time indoors, one, in a crowded space with a lot of people, and two, we're all, we're mountain biking, we're rafting, we want to be outside in the sun, and I'm taking as much of that as we can because our summers are so short. So we quickly realized after a couple of weeks of, okay, let's just do this virtually. And I think that we had a lot of support, so it was kind of an easy transition. The film festival programming itself comes from another organization in California that's kind of the national host for this event. So we had a relatively easy time creating that online platform, but it was just a shift in marketing, basically, and communicating to the community that this is what we were going to do, and we hope that you can join us. So that event was on May 6th, and there was a little bit more reimagining with that because of the fact that it was virtual. We didn't have a limited capacity. So rather than making it a set ticket price, which this year was going to be $20 per ticket, we opted to just do donation-based ticket sales because we weren't relying on any sort of number, and we didn't have a cap. So we're like, okay, I think if we do donation-based, then we'll have some folks that are able to give $1 and some that can give, we did the marketing $1 to $100, whatever you wanted to give, whatever you felt comfortable giving us. We just want people to join. And we kind of felt like this was just a good opportunity to bring the community together. And honestly, as we were planning it, kind of were like, whatever happens, happens. We don't this is critical funding, but we're doing okay. And if we don't raise as much, it's totally fine. Luckily for us, kind of like Habitat, we had sponsorships already, maybe about half of our sponsorships already for the event. And then once we decided to shift to virtual, we, I think, got one more. So we stopped pushing that, and we're just focusing on our ticket sales. And the ticket sales ended up being very successful. We had folks give $1. We had most folks give $20. And we had a couple folks give $200, plenty give $100. So it really was a wide range of support, and it really did, provide us with a good amount of funding, and really just great to see how successful it was. And another shift, we also do a silent auction at this event every year. So we have varying, things that people can bid on. And this year I was like, okay, I think that's another important thing we need to do. And I had already been kind of thinking of ways to make our silent auction more successful. And we opted to use, it's an online platform called 32 Auctions. And it was a free software that basically just housed the event photo or the item photo, a little description, and like tracked the bidding. It didn't have any, we didn't use it for transactions. We didn't use it for anything extravagant, but it was just to track our auctions, and it went super well. We had that open for a week before the actual event, so it gave folks some time to peruse, to start bidding if they wanted to, and then during the event gave it a big push, and that ended up being a lot more successful than we thought as well. And yeah, the biggest thing was just, I think what helped us the most was not having set ticket prices, because it allowed anyone in any way to support and to join. And that was, like I said, our main goal was to just bring people together. And we sold about 110 tickets. Normally we sell 174, but because it was a virtual event, we are using the estimation that it was probably a family, if not a couple, or a group of people, group of roommates watching it together. So we're assuming everyone that I've talked to was watching it with at least one other person, if not 2 or 3. So we think there was probably 3 to 4 people on that event per ticket. And so our reach was about 370 this year, which was more than double what we can do in our in-person event. So we made $500 more than last year, and we're able to double our reach. So for us, shifting to virtual was, not ideal, because we didn't have that face-to-face contact with everyone to highlight our partners and to just have people interact with the Watershed Council. But to more than double our reach was pretty special for us, and to just see that community support was fantastic. And moving forward, we're going to shift back to an in-person event, but I think we're going to try to add a virtual component, whether it's live streamed or recorded and people can watch it later, so that folks can do that kind of engagement as they want. And instead of having to go to one set event, they could, join us on the Friday after and watch it recorded and interact that way. So we really enjoyed that. And for us, it made a lot of sense, and was able to bring people together and still raise a pretty good amount of funding for our educational programming.
Wow, thanks for that, James. And one of the themes that we're seeing is that so far the 3 of you, Elise and Lauren and you, James, have pivoted, and then there have been silver linings in what you've done, that like, okay, there is a piece of this that we need to continue to look at in the future. So congratulations, because I was still in the middle of April 90th when the month of April just wouldn't be over. So okay, well, good. Well, thank you. And those of you who are speaking, just so you know that people are putting questions in the chat box. And at the end of this, I'll tell everyone how they can save the chat box, because there's some gold that's being given there in the chat box. Okay, so next, I'm trying to find her. There she is. Okay, next who we're going to hear from is Grace. And Grace Anschutz works at Roundup River Ranch, and she does events for them. And she's got a few different things she's going to talk about, from the summer camp programming, so you can tell them a little bit about Roundup River Ranch, and then event planning too. So Grace, if you'll just talk a little bit about what's going on at Roundup River Ranch.
So like Robin said, my name is Grace Anschutz, and I'm the Special Events and Grassroots Giving Manager at Roundup River Ranch. I'm really excited to share with you kind of a brief summary of really the hard work, dedication, and commitment of our staff, volunteers, donors, and board of directors to keep children with serious illness and their families as a top priority through this COVID-19 pandemic. I think someone else shared it that, how are we making lemonade out of lemons? We're changing our programming to meet the needs of our campers with serious illness where they are. We continue to seek to impact them through virtual camp programming, now through our July summer camp programs. During this time, we're excited to give the opportunity for kids to still connect with others on a similar life journey through similar diagnosis, make friends, and participate in what they love about camp, which is joy and silliness, and the ability to develop confidence. I repeat, camp is not canceled. We're bringing camp to our campers and their families through a variety of different formats. So right when the pandemic happened, we knew that our campers were at home. A lot of this change isn't something new for them. They're used to being afraid of an invisible illness or missing school, but we wanted to continue to be the joy and light for them. So we started our Best Week Ever newsletter, which looks a lot like camp, sounds a lot like camp, but is the ability to use resources at home to do some of your favorite camp activities. And kind of for us, that was really the transition to give ourselves enough time to make really meaningful plans for summer. So we sent out a weekly newsletter, and really exciting. We had such positive response. We're really looking to continue this moving forward as how we keep touch with our families throughout the year. We're shifting our camp programs online. For those you don't know, Roundup River Ranch provides summer camp experiences to children with serious illness. And children are grouped by diagnosis, so their camp programs will look really similar to that, just online. In this planning for us, you know, we've heard of Zoom bombing and kind of some of the internet security issues, especially as it relates to children. So for us, it was a unique opportunity to keep health and safety as our top priority to consider platforms. So our campers are moving to an educational platform that allows them to meet in large group, meet in small group, but not just sit at a computer all day. We're really looking at how can kids do, you know, what they can where they are in kind of a 2x2 foot space. So they'll get a challenge from those same awesome adult role models that they love to see at camp. But they'll also be able to do that in the online format. And then we're looking at virtual camper reunions, again, to just continue to connect during this time when they need to hear from us, as well as a joy delivered option. So we're sending camp in a box so that kids who their access to resources in their house might not be the same, that everyone kind of starts with that level playing field. So if they need a certain program component, that they'll have it in their little box ready to open when camp starts. And so really kind of that with our program overview, but Roundup River Ranch runs on people, power, and philanthropy. So as our program team makes that important pivot, so is our development and marketing team, especially as it pertains to an event. I think like a bride plans for a rainy day, event managers, we're used to having backup plans. If your event had an outdoor component, you're usually ready for rain. And so as we see kind of changing recommendations and guidelines, and as we really hear and listen from donors, vendors, and community members about their own personal preference and need, we bring the relational focus back to fundraising and events. I think we're really used to looking big picture and thinking 350 to 700 people, what are we doing for them? But really focusing on the relationships we build that make people want to give to events, to see where they are and what opportunities can we provide for them to give to these programs, because now more than ever, really our campers need us. From Roundup River Ranch, I think I was sharing with Robin before this got started, we're kind of in a unique position as we've seen everything from the cancellation to the postponement to taking a first stab at a virtual event, and then continuing to try to use all of this information as we consider our $1 million question, which is a grateful harvest. On the same day as Elisa's Carpenter Ball, we were supposed to host our superhero ski day. And on March 12th, we chose to cancel a March 14th event. I think from this, we really learned the importance of follow-up and stewardship. We were able to maintain our sponsorship dollars, really through that as a team, similar themes of communicating quickly with donors and vendors about what was happening and why it was happening. And we were actually able to see an increase in fundraising through our cancellation communication. So we canceled the event and really kind of sent out a broad message to our supporters on the front end of COVID-19, stretching beyond those who had historically supported the event, to really let them know why we were canceling and what that meant for our organization and kind of our fundraising. Our Denver event was supposed to be in May 8th, so I guess just 2 weekends ago, but we made the decision to postpone that really early. After the guidelines were released from the city and county of Denver, we postponed the event until late October, and really from that we learned the importance of strong sponsor relationships. When we looked at our sponsor base, there were a lot of people who were already a part of our COVID-19 precautions and guidelines discussions. We had board members and really strong corporate relationships. So again, we were able to maintain those funds because of really keeping it back to the grounding of our mission and less about the benefits of the event. And really kind of the importance of volunteer leadership with that one as well, as we built those sponsorship kind of changes and pivots that our volunteer leadership, or really our board and our event committees, were able to support us in a lot of communication. So not only did people receive the kind of mass email that shared what we were doing, but we were able to provide really personal touch points, not only from paid staff, but from volunteers as well, who were able to share their perspective. And then I think to the importance of vendor relationships, a huge part of events is the spending that we're taking of really what is our cost to raise a dollar and how are we using money really responsibly. And so as we're up here and have kind of really tried to build a base in Denver through this event, we've really worked to build vendor relationships as well to see, how can we partner across multiple events so it's a really meaningful relationship for us and them. And just we're able to hear such positive response from all of them that, pivoting, changing a date across all different vendors can be really hard to find that sweet spot, but just through strong relationships, people were really able to hear where we are and hear our precautions, especially with postponing. We have a really busy fall. We provide 8 family camp experiences almost every weekend. And so we were really tight on what weekend we could choose for a postponement. So it was exciting to really see the fruits of the labors of great vendor relationships, that they knew our top priority was meeting our campers for those weekends. And so they were able to be flexible with us as we kind of pivoted and looked at a new date. I think in terms of taking a stab at a virtual event, we were a partner of the Colfax Marathon, and we're really excited about this opportunity to increase peer-to-peer fundraising and awareness and raise more diverse funds, because we knew that with kind of our pivot in fundraising that we were going to be making asks to a lot of our more traditional donors. And so when the Colfax Marathon was canceled, we decided to have our first ever virtual 5K. When in really low stakes with a virtual event, the expenses are little to none besides staff time. And so we looked at what resources we had already developed, which is our peer-to-peer fundraising through our superhero ski day event, and we use the platform Classy. And with that, we were able to get a campaign up and running in 15 minutes, start really grassroots efforts via social media. And through kind of an innovation grant through our overhead organization, we were able to raise now $17,000, just got a large donation in this morning. It's not huge like our $1 million events, but it was really neat to see, about 50% of those donors were first-time donors. They were responsive to what we were kind of doing and how we were pivoting our camp programming. And so really it was kind of all ages, all around the world. And we were really not only able to fundraise, but for us, community and connection is so important to our mission. But how are we providing that to our donors as well? That events can really provide that for people. They're looking to connect with their friends that they see once a year at this gala, or they're looking to kind of build a connected community with others who are philanthropically minded. And so really for that, by having this virtual event, we were sending out challenges, encouraging people to share via hashtag and really kind of start this movement of positivity and light. I think that we've received so many emails from, various vendors that you might have bought one jacket from 3 years ago about their COVID response. And, a lot of it's negative. And for us, that's not really camp. And so that's why we never wanted to cancel camp. As we look to postpone or cancel events, we're just continuing to try to be the hope and the light for not only our program recipients, but also our donors. And so with the virtual 5K, we were kind of able to provide opportunity to people who can't traditionally support us in the Colorado area. We've got a lot of volunteers and staff who are international, and so on their own time zone, they were able to participate. And then kind of as we answer the $1 million question with all of that in mind, A Grateful Harvest is our largest fundraising event of the year. And our largest fundraising effort. We raised approximately 25 to 30% of our operating budget in one night alone. I think it's important to acknowledge the history of the event, that it's really the cornerstone of our organization. The first one was the night before they opened the doors of camp. And so with that, while we're not ready to announce what we're doing or make a decision, what we've learned is not to make those decisions quickly, that this is $1 million question. And so research, and more research. I think we're not looking to make quick decisions, and we're focusing on listening just as quickly as we are ready to respond, of really hearing where our traditional base of supporters are in terms of gathering together, whether that be on a large scale event or smaller events as well. Again, that dependence on volunteer leadership. We are so fortunate to have a strong board of directors who are involved through various committees, and our event committees being one of those true highlights of our organization. We're fortunate to have co-chairs who have led the events for 2 years, agreed to a last year, not knowing what they would be getting into. And so really regular communication from them, and instead of just presenting ideas, offering opportunities to brainstorm and for them to really fill in, because they're representative of the group that really historically supports this event. Donor surveying has been really important to us. Again, we are not sharing like, oh, when we're sharing with people, we're like, oh, we're not canceling, we're not going virtual, not this, but like, what are you comfortable with? And if we were to go, in person, if we were to go virtual, what do you like about that option? And what just isn't right for you? And a lot of other events, I think that as we consider virtual opportunities, you can really see something that's done well and not done well, that the tune out of commercial breaks in a virtual event, I've really learned, as I've watched quite a few, that short and sweet, which hasn't always been our strength. We provide a really long program with a lot of camper components. And so really, how can we look at virtual as the opportunity to provide pre-recorded content that's really strong, and then provide live fundraising opportunities through event technology? And really kind of that being my last point of, we've been really, traditional in a sense of, we do old school bid numbers and a lot of collections as kind of a frontward facing experience, but how are we considering mobile bidding and live streaming as an integration, not only this year, but moving forward? We've put so much time and research kind of into learning about what we could do to make a Grateful Harvest possible. How can we use this moving forward? And so looking for, as there are opportunities for in-person, how can those who are gathered in person and those who gather virtually still feel that community and connection through kind of event technology, really with mobile bidding. We're looking at shifting to a company called Qtego, who's been doing virtual and live stream for a long time. Not only are they a live auction and silent auction software, but they're really able to do that camper call, which is where we raise approximately 50% of those event funds, and really a huge part of our annual fundraising. And then live stream opportunities, if we're to provide, kind of those fun camper moments that really tell the story of our mission in person, how can those who aren't traveling to the Valley this summer or might not have been historically able to participate in a Grateful Harvest, able to stream in through really meaningful live stream technology? I think our struggle is by August, people are going to be really used to virtual or really used to hybrid models or really used to whatever this new normal is. And so continuing to be on the forefront of really best practices and those things have really been the efforts of our staff. So we haven't made the decision. We're, not really ready, but we just have been focused so much on research. And I think that's been the best part, that our organization really grounds ourselves in making sustainable and excellent decisions. And so with that, we just have tried to collect as much information as possible.
Great. Wow. So listening to you between events and programming, I mean, it's like everything has had to pivot for you all. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, that was just a lot of really good information about how you all are just pivoting right now, and that you're still in the middle of it, that that there's still more to come. So, okay. So thank you, Grace. So let's go to Kaylee next. So let me spotlight your video. This is Kaylee Brennan, and she is like event specialist extraordinaire. She lives here in the Bell Valley, but she does events all over the country. And I thought it was important for us to hear from Kaylee as to what have you seen, what are you seeing coming up, and what advice can you give us?
For the most part, the people we've heard from are all making good decisions, and all live events kind of got thrown into the deep end of the pool and are trying to figure out. And pivot is the word of the year, I think, for events. Everyone that I've been speaking with, my clients around the country and locally, are all kind of in the same boat. Do we look for another date? In this valley, that's really tough. Elise made a great point. This is we're going into what is traditionally our event season, and finding a date that doesn't conflict with another organization, particularly since so much has been canceled, is really, it's challenging. And as we all, as several events push to the fall, and now the fall is kind of looking like, well, what are we going to do in the fall? Virtual events has evolved quickly in the past 3 or 4 years. I hear more and more about virtual events and hybrid virtual live events. And I think that whatever happens going forward, there's going to always in the future be a virtual component, just because virtual events can reach so many more people in so many more places, that what was traditionally a sold out event at 400 people can now be a hybrid event that can reach 1,000 people. And as people get more and more comfortable with the idea of all of these online platforms, it will become more and more viable as far as matching and exceeding fundraising. Live events cannot be beat when it comes to peer pressure and excitement and that feeling that we all get when we're in a room and we're all pulling for the same organization, and your neighbor and the people at your table, and you get caught up in the excitement of it. That is very difficult to recreate in a virtual environment. And because of that, a lot of organizations are thinking, we can't ever. So you change your expectations. And the advantage to a virtual event is that your costs are cut so dramatically that you don't have to raise as much money because you're not spending as much money. There's a lot of advantage to that. It's still about your organization and how you represent your organization to the world, as to how you represent on a mobile platform. We're a grassroots event. We are a peer-to-peer, or we're a grassroots organization. We're a grassroots peer-to-peer organization. That transfers to virtual events as a grassroots. Keep your heart is basically what I'm saying. It's really important that your grassroots event doesn't turn into a slick studio produced event on the mobile platform, because your heart's not there. I think everybody has touched on things that are really important when you go to a virtual event or a hybrid event. Communication is key. If you can't, you have to be able to communicate to the community, your stakeholders, your board members, your past donors, in a clear and easy, and make it really easy for them to participate. Don't forget to ask for money. Please make it easy for them to give you money. These are fundraising events, and you can't raise funds unless you ask people. Sponsorships, while in-person event for some corporations are where they want their sponsorship donors to go, remember that with virtual events, those sponsorship dollars can reach so many more people and for such a longer period of time. And that should be really attractive to your corporate donors. Choosing platforms, there's so many out there, and unfortunately the best advice I can give you is just research. live streaming, I think, is going to be part. Were we to go back to where we were 6 months ago in terms of live events, live streaming has to be a part of your event. Again, your reach is just increased so much. People who traditionally couldn't be there because they spend their summers in Europe, or they have a cold and they can't come. Your event sells out and they've never been able to come, but they want to see what it's like. And that technology exists, and it's pretty simple. And there are dozens of platforms where you could put a live streamed event. Recording your event and having access to it for a period of time. Those things, regardless of what happens with COVID, I think are a part of our conversation in the future. And I think should always be, if it's at all possible. I'm intrigued by those opportunities and how we can change things to make sure live streaming is a part of our future in event production. Pretty much what everybody has said. I think going forward, even in the fall, when we get to black, if it's 50 people or 200 people, if we get to a point, I think you're going to still feel some resistance from your donors moving forward of walking into a room full of a bunch of people they don't know. So maintaining an online presence, even when this is all done, we have a vaccine and we're all safe, I think is going to be part of our future. And that, to me, is the silver lining to, we have all of these tools that make an online presence so easy in so many ways. And there's so many advantages that we need to be looking forward to that kind of positioning with live events. Time, that's the big one for me when we talk about silent auctions and fund-a-needs, paddle raising. It's in my experience, there needs to be some kind of a time limit on that, and there needs to be something attached to it that can excite your donor base, and be that really great auction items, or be that a video or a plea from a beloved individual in the organization. Don't forget to reach out to the hearts of your donor base, because that's one of the things that becomes challenging when you're talking about a purely virtual event, is what encourages people to give is your passion and your love of the organization. So pretty much, I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said. I don't know that I have that much to add. You guys, everybody's been, so flexible. I'm amazed at everybody's flexibility, and my clients have been so good about, all right, let's try this and see what happens. And, some of the suggestions have been pretty outrageous, and we're trying everything. We're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Good.
That's pretty much it.
Well, thank you for sharing that overall view. And one of the things that I expected you to say that you didn't, that will lead into what Marin's going to talk about, is that one of your theories is to have the event paid for before you even plan it.
That's true. That's one of the things that Habitat one of the reasons Habitat had some success, the success that they had, is their sponsorships dollars and the $1 million events. Those really have done the groundwork, and the fund a need and the auctions and all of the stuff that happens at the event that raises funds are the icing on the cake. And those sponsorships are really having that event paid for. And that's, again, the advantage to a virtual event. Those sponsorship dollars pay for the event and some, which is a huge advantage. Because you no longer have the catering and the venue and the production and all of this stuff. Well, you still have some production, but it's simplified so much that your expenses become so much less impactful on your actual fundraising efforts.
Great. Okay, Kaylee, thank you so much. And like I said, that leads right into Maren. And let me see if I can, okay, here, let me spotlight Maren. Maren is at the Vail Valley Partnership, and she's going to talk a little bit about an overview of Vail Health Report. That's the state of our community. And I know a lot of people are throughout the country. You're not necessarily here in the Vail Valley. But as you listen to what this report says, I think one of the things that we have seen throughout the country is that we're just a microcosm of how people feel and what they think. And I think it will help as we go into our discussions talking about what does the future of events look like. So Maren, take it away.
Thanks, Robin, and thanks everyone for sharing so far. As Robin mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about community sentiment. This is from a survey that Vail Health had done in April. They are continuing this survey, but I do not have results or an update for May. So when we do receive the updated information, I'll make sure that you all have that through an e-blast for your reference, and so you can take a look at that information. And I also posted a link to the survey that I'm going to talk about in the chat box. So you should be able to click on that and follow along if you'd like. And I'm just going to point out a few things here on the survey. So Vail Health conducted this survey by emailing it out to about 2,000 people from their community. And then it's also been published on social media. I actually received it as a sponsored social media ad, so maybe you've seen it and taken it as well. I'm sure they would appreciate your input if you haven't seen that or get the opportunity to take it. So specifically on page 3, they talk about the social impacts and what they've seen through the responses. And, you know, this isn't necessarily event specific, but it does offer us some insight of what people might be comfortable doing as we move forward through the pandemic. And I imagine, you know, this will definitely change as we get into the next levels, the blue level, and then eventually the black level of opening our community. So on page 3, there was a note that the community is most comfortable with opening things like golf courses and opening participatory events such as bike and trail running races. So that indicates, you know, that those types of events, you know, you still might get some good participation from your constituents, and that might be the things that kind of fit within their comfort level. So golf tournaments, the bikes and trail running races, and so on, things that people can do while still being social distanced or within their own group. And then it talks about how the least comfortable community sentiment is with things like concerts, food and beer festivals. And at this point in time, people were indicating that they were still very uncomfortable with social gatherings of more than 10 people. And it talks about, you know, how people will definitely be getting out a little bit more as these businesses open up, with parks and recreation being sort of the ones that they expect to be most utilized, and then sort of those kind of self-care businesses. So again, this could be helpful when you're thinking about sponsorships and what businesses you might want to approach and talk to as you start to plan your events. And then moving on to page 7, so scrolling down a little bit, still within the social impacts. So it just kind of gives you a chart of, you know, how people responded to their comfort level of opening golf courses, opening events, the trail and bike races, and then, you know, you can kind of see the comparison between those participatory events versus things like concerts and food and beer festivals. Also on page 8 is a larger breakdown of sort of the type of comfort level people are with the businesses. And again, I think, you know, just having some of this information in your back pocket could help you with some of those sponsorships and thinking about, you know, who might be appropriate to approach and you know, maybe might be comfortable still supporting your events as their business starts to ramp back up, as people are able to get back out there and start patronizing our local businesses. So that's really all I had. I just wanted to point out those few data points for you, and definitely provide you with this link so that you have it and can kind of dive deeper into it. And as I mentioned, this is the April data. So as soon as we have the May information and are able to share that, I will make sure that you all have a link to that as well, because I imagine that will be updated and hopefully change, and hopefully people's comfort level is getting a little better, you know, as we get the go ahead to start to reopen the economy and our businesses. I hope that trend follows, that people do, you know, want to get back out in the community and start to participate in events. So that's all I had. Happy to take any questions or answer those from the chat box.
Great. Thank you so much, Maren, because I think as we get ready to go into our breakout rooms, that helps us to kind of think about how are people feeling. I mean, we can hold an event, but if nobody wants to come, then what Kaylee just said, you know, that energy in the room to do, you know, auctions and paddle races and all that doesn't happen if we can't get people there. So I think that's important information. So thank you for doing that. Okay, so tell us what you learned.
Good morning, Robin. This is David.
Hi, David. Let me spotlight you so people can see you. There we go. Hi, David.
How are you?
Good.
Hey, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I think it was a great idea in breaking into small groups. And one of our small group participants, Leslie, she has such a great idea and support of what her college is doing. And in addition to that, she's new to the space, but she was able to articulate so well what their college is doing, and maybe she could share that with us.
Leslie, are you willing to share?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. And Robin, thank you for hosting this. This is my first time participating. Yeah, what I shared was, I wouldn't necessarily say that Colorado Mountain College, that this intent was to go after funds. It was really to go after trying to support our communities, and our college is spread across 12 mountain communities in Colorado. And a couple of the outreach things that CMC did immediately after switching to online learning was, first of all, offering free tuition for students in our districts for the summer semester. And it was much more about supporting our communities. Many of our mountain communities are have a lot of the underserved population. We're a lot of immigrant communities, and keeping those students enrolled in college at a time when many of them lost their jobs because they were working in the service industry, at the ski areas, at the restaurants, everything, supporting those. So offering free tuition for our students in our districts for the summer semester. Additionally, CMC created an outreach program, which many of you in the mountain communities probably know about, and it was back to business. And Sarah Grant, my colleague, who I think is also on this call, she was one of our key players in that program to reach out to our mountain community businesses with business support, whether it was, rewriting a strategic plan, redesigning a website, offering professional service to our businesses in the mountain communities that support us. So Sarah, if you're on, it'd be great if you could outline a little bit more about that, because you were very involved.
Thanks, Leslie. And yeah, kudos to you all for the free tuition. That's just so cool. Thank you for doing that. Sarah had another meeting and she had to get off the line, so she's not around, but thank you for sharing that, Leslie. Okay, anybody else? What you learned that you that you think was just like an aha that you'd like to share? Did anybody see anything in the chat box that they said, oh, I want to know more about that, or that gave me an idea? Yes, Cookie.
First of all, our group was an interesting collection, and we all kind of knew each other. I had never met Trisha, but we had all our paths had crossed, which didn't surprise me in this valley. I put out there an idea that I got advertised from the Women's Foundation of Colorado, and several people thought of different ways they might be able to do that. Although if we all do it, it won't work too well. The Women's Foundation, rather than having a very large luncheon this year, I don't know what the sponsorship dollar amount requirement is. I haven't looked that up yet, but instead they're asking people to be sponsors and hold very small luncheons in your own home. Obviously, following social distancing, whatever is required. And so when you decide to be a sponsor, then they send you a kit on how to do this. And then someone else in our group, I think it was, Jen from Bright Future Foundation said, well, they usually used to have a wine dinner. Maybe they could ask people to host wine dinners and then send the wine to the host as a variation on that. And then of course, when people are there, you basically, they either pay to come to it, and that's the donation, or you ask them at the tiny safe event that could be indoors or outdoors this time of year. So that was one. That would be a lot of, building relationship or maintaining relationship as well as making some money.
Great. Wow, that's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that, Cookie. And so there was one question in the chat box, and I don't know if anybody was able to answer it. I saw Marin came up with one answer. So the question was, and a couple people responded about sponsors. Is this a bad time to be asking sponsors to give you auction items or whatever? And Marin, you gave one response. Did anybody else happen to talk about that in their breakout room that had an answer for that as to how businesses are feeling about that right now? No? Yeah.
It's Kaylee. We didn't discuss it, but I have an opinion.
Good.
For those who know me, know that that's not unusual. I think it's going to depend on the business. I don't think anybody minds being asked. You just have to be, I would preface the ask with, these are challenging times. We understand that small businesses have been particularly affected. Nonprofits too have been particularly affected. Is there something you can do? Can it be a gift card so that people are coming back into your place of business? I think it's creating an opportunity for the business as well is the way to do that. And I think you're right. I think there are some businesses that are going to be really challenged. But if gift cards are an easy ask and an easy give for the business. They're also an easy buy in a silent auction. And it gives the business an opportunity to increase their customer base, hopefully, and it also doesn't cost them anything in the immediate short term. So they don't actually have to redeem that until the time comes that somebody redeems it. And even then, often the payback to the business is bigger than the $50 or $100 or $200 or whatever it is in the gift card. Gift cards are an easy ask for small businesses.
Thank you, Kaylee. That's great advice, I think, for all of us. What we're going to do next week is our last one. This will be number 10 of these webinars that I have done. And so what I'm going to do is do best practices. We have had some of the most amazing people that I've interviewed from all over the country who have given us advice on everything as a fundraising consultant who's raised billions of dollars, to how do we tell our story virtually, to how do we keep productive, how do we organize ourselves during this time. And so what I'm going to do is, if you missed any of those sessions, this is the time to come, because some people offered us their books, some offered us their online programs for free. I mean, we've just had some amazing people. So next week is the last one. However, I have been had a few requests of people who would like to just answer the question, how do I fundraise my way out of COVID? So I'm going to do a bonus session for them the following week. And then we have another nonprofit learning series coming up in June. And we're looking at doing something financial to help us through this time of what do we need to be looking at financially. Thank you for your participation today. Thank you for being here. This has been a blast for me. I hope you all have enjoyed it as much as I have.